going on, everyone? Episode 70 of Lock and Talk Live, coming to you live on a Monday. And guess what? Week one of the Texas high school football season. I feel like it was a pretty successful one. I mean, just right off the bat, you look at the Pigskin Classic over at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. All three of those games, the combined score of defeat was 5 points. So between those three games, there's only a 5 point differential. I mean, you talk about just instant classics. I mean, you have Parish Episcopal, who I'm sure Shana will get to here in a little bit, and then over in Houston, you had quite a few, I think, surprising and interesting games to note. But before we do all that, I'd like to bring in my co-hosts and kind of just see how they're doing to start the week. So Jackson, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Had a busy week covering some games. Texas high school football is back. It was really fun watching a lot of the games. Checking out Duncanville, South Oak Cliff on ESPN this weekend. So just a busy week and very excited for week two.
Shana, how about you? How you doing? Oh, Shayna, I think you're on mute. We have the first casualty of the season. First casualty. Go ahead and check your settings there. It looks like you may be on mute. I'll say I'm doing pretty well. Well, Shayna, are you back with us? Oh, try again. I think I might have heard you there, Shayna. Well, you try and figure that out, Shayna. I'm going to jump on my screen here. Uh, Give me a little thumbs up when you think you got it figured out. There was some great football. I mean, just across the state, like you were talking about. We'll talk about that South Oak Cliff and Duncanville game. I think, those two defenses are going to be a force to be reckoned with. It looks like this year. So with that being said, Jackson, let me turn it over to you real quick. I just want to get your initial thoughts of the Texas high school football week one. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of the teams that we expected the win. Yes, we did have some crazy upsets, some teams that we were not expecting to pull off the wins, but I think we saw the perennial powerhouses of Texas high school football really show out. You saw them definitely take some big wins this past weekend, so that was really impressive, and it was just good to see all these athletes back on the field. It's been a long couple of months on the off season, going into spring ball, going into the summer. It's just great to have everyone back in pads. It was great to go out to some games, see fans in the stands, see the band, the cheerleaders, the dance teams, everything that's involved with Texas high school football. So I was really impressed with how a lot of the games went this past week, and I was very impressed with the games I went to on Friday and on Thursday as well.
Yeah, what do you make of? Let's start at the game that you were at. What do you make of the Willens North Shore game? I know there was a lot of hype around that game, and North Shore. I mean, you talk about setting the tone early in the season. I mean, you look at how they play, and you're like, can they be beat this year? I mean, does this say more about North Shore, or does it say more about the Woodlands?
I think North Shore just came out and they wanted it more. I think that the physicality was not there from the Woodland side at the just from the jump, just from the start. North Shore came out and on defense put out a 3-and-out. Very first play, almost got a pick six. The Woodlands punts the ball, and then North Shore takes a shot on the first play of the game. Uh, Caleb Bailey overthrew him, but he wasn't overthrowing many more passes after that. Their offense was just rolling. Their run game was great. I was very impressed with how their offensive line looked, giving Caleb Bailey a lot of time back there. I just think overall North Shore was very well coached, very well prepared for this game. They came out, they were hungry, they wanted it. Physically, they were just better than the Woodlands was that night, and it really showed. Uh, as you look at the final score, 49-21. I mean, it was just a tough game to kind of watch all with all the hype built up to it. I was really expecting a close game. I mean, I picked the Woodlands to win that game, so obviously was a little wrong there, but uh, it was great to see that North Shore has rebuilt again, and I expect them to have a really good season. It'll be a true test, I think, when they play Tascasita down the line, but yeah, they really just came out and out really I felt like the Woodlands just outcoached and out North Shore was just more physical.
Yeah, and we got Shana back. Let's see if she is has that audio now. Real quick in the comments, we had Alan G said watch some highlights. He was shocked by how kind of just that Cedar Park Cedar Ridge game. I was shocked too. Did not expect to be Cedar Park to lose the way they did. Shana, let's see, is your audio working?
Is it working now?
It is. There we go. We got you.
Okay.
So let's go. Let's get your initial thoughts of week one of the Texas high school football season, Shana.
I mean, I think week one was really successful in the DFW area. We didn't see too many big upsets. Like you said, I was going to get to that Parrish Alito game. I think that's the biggest. I wouldn't even call it an upset. It was the biggest fan upset for sure. But I was excited to see Parrish really, put the tools that they had to use that they've been working on for years. And would you like me to go into detail right now about it?
Go for it. Yeah.
As y'all know, I was on campus at Parrish earlier this year for our media day, and I was talking to some of the guys specifically. I was talking to Daniel Demery, and he was saying, Alita's our first game. And I was like, ooh, rough first game for you guys. And he said, no, not really. They have a lot of seniors who graduated last year, and we're really confident in what we have. And I think we can go out and really show that we have what it takes to play with some of these big time UIL schools, and including Titletown Alito. And that's exactly what they went out there and did. And it felt like almost like a proud mom moment, right? Because I know these guys at Parrish, and I was like, wow, they got that done. I was really excited to see that happen. And then another kind of upset that I saw was Crandall defeating Forney. It was only by 3 points. It was by a kick, but I thought that was a pretty big upset as far as fans are concerned, because typically Forney is a little bit better than Crandall. But Crandall kept their hats in the game, kept it score for score the entire game, and it was a really great game.
Let's turn it over. I know you talked upset. You mentioned the word upset, so let's kind of move on to that next question here. What was the upset of the week? If you had to pick one game from across the state, what would be that game you would classify as this is probably the biggest upset of week one? Jackson, let's go to you.
I'm definitely going New Braunfels upsetting Denton Ryan. I mean, Denton Ryan hasn't lost a regular season game. I think they were 68-1 going into that game in regular season football games the past couple of years, and they lost their second game in 68 or in 70 games. So that's pretty crazy to me. I think that's the biggest upset. Denton Ryan was definitely the heavy favorite there. They were up big, and then they let New Braunfels come back. So I think that's the biggest upset to me. Of course, you did see a lot of the Denton Ryan stars, as in Anthony Hill, really balled out on both sides of the ball as they used him as sort of a wildcat quarterback and as a running back. But New Braunfels was able to get it done, and I think that to me was the biggest upset, along with, in my opinion, I think Parrish Episcopal and Alito was also an upset, because many people, from a fan's perspective and from a Texas high school football perspective, think of Alito as this top team, and why would a private school beat them? So those were my two I would have to pick.
Shana, let's turn it over to you now. What was that one upset that you can think of from this past week?
That one upset, I have to go with the Denton Ryan and New Braunfels. I had New Braunfels pegged to have lost that game when the schedule came out. But that goes to show you that you can't count anybody out. What last year was a crazy start to Texas high school football, and I think we're going to see a lot of the same this year.
Yeah, I wonder if that is an upset. On my games to watch, I definitely didn't think New Braunfels was going to win that game. If you go back and read my article from Friday, but I'm pretty high on New Braunfels. I think they've been building something pretty good there. Here in Central Texas. The one concern I had, of course, was losing their quarterback from last year. Of course, he graduated, and their new quarterback, he came in as a junior. I believe it was over 300 yards. I have him as one of my players of the week that will come out tomorrow. I don't know if that one's the shocker, but it might be. I mean, of course, you have. You mentioned, and this one really isn't an upset, but I think it's important to note, Jackson, you were over here mentioning some stats, about, teams and losing with Denton Ryan. Let me try to find my stat here. It was a stat I found I think it was for Allen, losing back-to-back games for the first time since 2007. Trying to find, I think that can't find it here. I had written it down somewhere. Can't find it, but I believe that stat is correct. Where last year it was losing in the home stadium for the first time, and who knows how long. This year it was losing for the back-to-back games for the first time in quite a while. But you know what? I think I will go with Denton Ryan New Braunfels. I can't really think of any others at the top of my head. Pretty sure there's some out there, but yeah, that one. Definitely was. I don't think a lot of people thought, especially the way it happened. Right, they were down. I think by the way, New Braunfels was at one point by I believe 20 or 19. It was in the second half. So you gotta love New Braunfels' fight there. And man, that district's looking pretty good right now. You have Cibolo Steel right there. You have Judson right there. Both Cibolo Steel and Judson. Judson's playing Westlake and Cibolo Steel playing Lake Travis. So really gonna get to see how good that district is this coming weekend. New Braunfels playing Seguin. So gonna get a good view of that district heading in this week. Let's move on to another question for you guys. Do we need to overreact to some of these scores? Right. So you think Allen, losing the way they did to a team outside a private school outside the state of Texas, for what it's worth. You have the Woodlands losing the way they did to North Shore. You have a couple of, there were a lot of teams that you look at the score and you'd be like, they lost by that, and that game was over in the first quarter. Is there a need to overreact for this? Shana, let's come to you.
I definitely don't think so. We saw this last year with multiple teams in the DFW area. I think it all comes down to they're getting right back on track. It's surprising that Allen lost in the fashion that they lost in, but I don't think we need to overthink it too much too yet. Now, if they come out next week and they lose again, then we're going to have to start saying, hey, what's going on with Allen? I don't think we have to quite yet.
And I believe it is C.E. King, is it not, that they're playing this upcoming week? And C.E. King had a very impressive victory. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's who Allen's playing next. But a very impressive victory for C.E. King. Jackson, do we need to overreact right now?
One of the scores I'm going to overreact to is Denton Geyer putting a beat down on Rockwell Heath. I think you really saw how good Jackson Arnold is. I think that Denton Geyer is going to be on another run this year with a new head coach. I think they're going to really run through the playoffs, and I think they have a really good shot at making that state championship a game again. That's one score that I was looking at it, and I was seeing the highlights all over Twitter while at the North Shore Woodlands game, and I was very impressed with how Jackson Arnold looked and Denton Geyer after seeing Rockwell Heath had a pretty good season last year. So that was one score I would have overreacted to, and I believe the overreaction is valid. One that I feel like a lot of people will overreact to, and if you look at the score, is Ridgepoint Westlake. If you actually were paying attention and keeping track with the game was tight up until the third quarter. It was 14-14. Ridgepoint was hanging in there with the defending three-time state champs. Of course, Westlake did Westlake things in the second half of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, and kind of blew the game open for themselves. But that's not to say this Ridgepoint team has something, and to be able to stick it with them and have a tie game going midway through the third quarter, I think that really shows something from them. I feel like there is a little bit of worry with the Woodlands North Shore score. For the Woodlands, you have all this talent that has transferred in. Not having that talent perform well in that first game, yes, that's a little concerning. But once you get into district play and get into the games that really matter, I feel like things will start to pick up. So yeah.
Now, will they be going D1 or D2 if they make the playoffs? Do you know that at the top of your head, Jackson? Because if they're going D1, then that's a little bit of a worry, right? Because then they'll have to play North Shore again. But if they're going D2, hey, maybe pump the brakes, right? So I'm not too sure, Jackson. You may know that, and you might look at. Go ahead.
The Woodlands will go D1, but they are Region 2. Region 2 plays the Duncanville and DeSoto bracket of the playoffs, so they would not have to meet North Shore again until the state championship game if things played out.
Alan G says Hallettsville holding Shiner 7 points. It was a little surprising, Alan, but you have to remember Hallettsville is a 3A school, Shiner is a 2A. And I think it was, I think I think Shiner jumped up 2 kind of classifications because they only go to 3A, but they jumped ahead quite a bit to play Hallettsville. So I'm not panicking on Shiner's loss just yet. In fact, in my rankings, they were number 1 for the 1A because I do rankings a little different. I don't do 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. I do 1A through 4A. They were number 1. Now they're number 5. simply because of the fact that they are 0-1. But again, they did play some stiffer competition at a higher level. Yeah, I think overreacting, some people are overreacting, for instance, to Lake Travis losing Arlington Martin. Well, one, they had Bo Edmondson out. He didn't play. Their defense giving up a little points is a little bit something where you might want to pay attention to. And hey, the game against Steele this week will be a telling sign about where this team stands. Westlake, you can say, oh, well, hey, that's a little, I think once they got settled, they're gonna rely on their defense this year. Last year it was kind of on the back of the offense, and I think this year they're gonna rely on that defense, and that defense can stand pat, which they did, right? They gave up those 14 points, and then I think it was a 37-0 run, I believe, for the rest of the game. So they're gonna rely on that defense. It's gonna be to get the other opposing offense off the field while the Westlake offense finds a groove. That's what happened against Ridge Point. Yeah, man. Yeah, Jackson, what you got?
Yeah, one more game I want to bring up that I feel like looking at the score, the overreaction is valid. Shadow Creek versus Manville. Was very impressed with how Shadow Creek looked. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be sneaky good in the Houston area this year. They've got their returning quarterback, Duke Butler Jr. They've got really high 4-star wide receiver Ja'Cory Watson, who really balled out, was a playmaker all over the field. Took the opening kickoff back 99 yards for a touchdown, gets called back on a hold. But really exciting way to start the game. And that was a big game for that community. And Shadow Creek just really stomped them and came out and really just took over the game defensively. I feel like that's a team that really Houston fans should really keep an eye out for. I think that they're going to make a nice little run here in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I was all set to use that one for one of the plays of the week, and then you go up and hold. I'm glad you didn't stop recording, Jackson, because right at the end I hear flag. I'm like, well, I can't use it now. So thank you for at least getting that last snippet, or otherwise I would have put a play of the week as one that doesn't exist in the official stats. So on to another question now. What teams impressed you the most? I think hands down, I'm just going to say North Shore impressed, right? Because I think a lot of us thought they were going to win. I didn't think they were going to win like that. That game was over after the first quarter. And you can say North Shore as well, but what teams impressed you, Jackson? Who you got?
Yeah, I'm going Shadow Creek. Really impressed me. Just being at the game, seeing what they got, was really impressed with them. I was really impressed with how North Shore played. Also really impressed with Willis. Now, no one's really talking about Willis right now because they played Rudder, but DJ Lagway threw for almost 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in the first half, had 100 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. Trent Miller, new head coach from spring, has got him rolling on that offense. I think Willis is going to be sneaky good this year. You're going to see crazy numbers put up by the number 1 dual threat quarterback in the country. Was really impressed with what I saw from them. Also really impressed from what I saw from Stratford. They went in and took on a Tomball team that, yes, had a lot of seniors graduate, but a really good Tomball team. And they went out there and beat them pretty good on their home turf. Really liked what I saw from Hawkins Poly and quarterback Nash Rankin. I'm expecting them to have a pretty good year again this year, returning a lot of key players from last year's team.
Shay, I'll turn it over to you now. What teams impressed you?
I was impressed with go up against a team like they already have a big benefit. Really,
Hey Shane, I think your AirPods might be dying or something. You're a little chopping in and out there. Can you try one more time for me?
yeah.
Yeah. No. So it looks like your AirPods might be dying now. That's okay. Let me tell you about the teams that impressed me. Maybe you turn off your AirPods and see if that might work. Have a little technical difficulties, but hey, that happens on some week kind of 2 type stuff. One team that impressed me was Dripping Springs. They defeated Vandergrift 23-20 last second field goal. Austin Novosad, who we know has had just a tremendous summer. His kind of just whole trajectory is skyrocketing. Not that he wasn't nobody to begin with, right? He came into the summer, committed to Baylor. But man, it was just great. And now you kind of have to wonder if things kind of we'll see how they kind of go. They're gonna, we'll kind of get a glimpse of them early. They face Bowie, I think week 4 they face Bowie. And that's gonna be the first key test. Alan G in the chat says Austin Bowie. They didn't think they would beat they wouldn't beat Vista Ridge. Now a good week 2 matchup, which I'm going to be at. I think I'm going to be at Cedar Ridge and Bowie in week 2. But man, Dripping Springs might, could they take Could they take first in district? Could they take second? Ooh, I don't know. It's possible. I write about it in my 5 questions. So check out that article on VYPE.com. Shana, let's turn it over to you now. Let's see if the audio is better.
Okay, is it better now?
That is great. It sounds great. Go ahead. What teams impressed you?
So I was really impressed by Crandall. Going up against a team like Forney, who you already have a pretty big rivalry with, is pretty big. But what I think impressed me the most is a lot of talk around Crandall right now is about OU commit Samuel Omasigo. He went down. He got hit hard. Some guys around the area, they could kind of like go after getting Sammy. But he went down, he went back into the locker room, came out with the sling, didn't play the rest of the game. And Crandall still showed that, we're not just one guy. We're 11 guys on the field at any given play. So they really went out there and showed against a team like Forney that, hey, we're in this for the long run. The other team that really impressed me was McKinney North under a new head football coach. They went out there, they grabbed the win. They grabbed the first win for McKinney ISD football, totally. We saw a lot of good guys graduate last year, and you're seeing the impact of summer workouts. You're seeing the impact of really working with your guys that are upcoming. With Heath, what we saw with Denton Geyer is the question was, who's going to be the quarterback this year? And I had this talk this weekend. Why let that be a question? Why not just start saying, hey, this is our quarterback and we're training him? But I think we saw the wheels fall off for Heath as far as that's concerned. So seeing a team like McKinney North, who kind of is in the same boat as Rockwall Heath, come out there under a new head coach and really show out, that really impressed me.
And yes, Alan, it is Bowie. Sorry about that. Just working a lot of stuff, and it's easy to say Bowie instead of Bowie. So it is Austin Bowie. I think we have to say it. I think a lot of people thought South Oak Cliff was going to repeat this year. I think a lot of people are going to still say that after this weekend. South Oak Cliff really impressed me. I mean, I think a lot of the question was, how is their quarterback situation? Because I think that's the key, really missing piece heading into the season. I think they also have a new offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really going to be what they're going to be focused on leading up into district and into playoffs. But man, I mean, holding Duncanville the way they did on defense, and I think they did a pretty good job moving the ball against a 6A power in Duncanville. Really impressed me. I think a lot of people went into that game picking Duncanville with good reason, but I think a lot of people, just as many people, came out impressed with how South Oak Cliff performed. They had a chance up until the end, really. Any other teams that impressed you before we move on to our next question? If I see any hand raises, we got anybody? Nope. All right, let's move on to our next question then. For teams that lost, right? Some teams are half the teams in Texas high school football 0-1 this week, right? What's one message that they need to hear going into week 2? Shana, let's turn it over to you. If you could tell teams that lost one message, what would that be?
I really just think the message would be, you're not out. Week ones can go one of two ways. Obviously, you win or you lose, and it all comes down to preseason games. They're tough in many ways. You haven't played all summer. You've played against your own team in scrimmages and stuff. You're not out yet. Keep working hard. Keep giving it all you got, because really that's what it comes down to. Is you play week by week. You don't play a whole season long each week. You play 1 week by 1 week.
Jackson, let's turn it over to you now. What's one message you give to those teams?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you're not out of the playoffs. It's the first game of the season. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things that you're definitely going to need to go back and go fix. But that's what the first game is normally for. For games where you get blown out and stuff, you take things from that and you move on to the next game. You can't keep thinking about it. I think it's important for the players to realize, like, this is only game 1. There's a potential of 17 games in a season, if not 10 more games in a regular season. You just got to focus on the rest, that especially going into district play, and just take what you can from game 1 and move forward from that. I think that's the most important thing, is just realizing it's not over. It is game 1. Of course, everyone wants to win it, but someone has to lose, and you just got to move on from it.
Hey, at the end of the day, you can be undefeated, and that's great. But hey, if you're hoisting that trophy up, at the end of the season, and you have 3 or 4 losses, no one's going to be complaining on that team. Let me tell you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I said this last week. Hey, the only games that matter for making playoffs are district, right? So, win those district games. This is that time where you figure some things out. And so, if you're one of those teams, that's what you tell them. It's like, hey, we're figuring our stuff out. Hey, maybe you had a lot of mental mistakes. You're working on that. It's all about something. Alan G in the comments again. Hey, thanks for joining in on this chat today, Alan. Really appreciate that. He says it's a glorified scrimmage, right? The most important improvements from week 1 to week 2, which is exactly that. By week 2, heading into week 3, you should start finding that solid footing. Especially for a lot of schools, you're starting a district weeks 3, 4, and on. So unless you have a small district like there's was it 26 or 27 6A, I believe it is, where they only have 6 teams. You're starting your district in weeks 3 and 4. So hey, it's not over by a long shot. Hey, Scotty T in the chat, former employee of VYPE, tuning in. Appreciate you tuning in, even though you're not with us anymore. You're still with us. I like that. All right, last question for you guys today. So we talk about the message you send to the team. If you're someone that was on a team that lost, what about for a team that won? What's the message you send to those teams, Jackson?
Well, I think it's some things that are similar from losing the game. You take it as a building block. You got to move on from it, take the good things, but also work on the bad things, because no game is perfect. There's always things to work on. There's always mistakes that have been made that you can learn from and work towards getting better. I think you take it as a building block. You definitely use it as momentum going into the rest of the season. But I think you've just got to take it one game at a time, realize that no one's perfect. You're never going to play a perfect game. So take what you can from the last game and build upon it up until the next week.
Shana, let's turn it over to you now. What's that message you send to the team?
I think it's really easy to get caught up in wins and to get caught up in, really good wins and thinking, oh, we're taking it all the way this year. We see it in pro sports, we see it in college sports, and we definitely see it in high school sports. So I think the biggest thing to remember here is, these wins aren't set in stone until the game is over. And same thing with season-long schedule. You haven't won until you've won. So like Jackson said, you learn something from every game, win or loss. Take what you've learned, pick one thing that you want to grow on, and work on it throughout that week, because these teams have seen you play, they've seen your film now, they see what you have this season, and they're coming for that win next week.
Yeah, and use that momentum as well, right? I mean, I mentioned the Pigskin Classic in San Antonio, but it's a perfect example. You had 3 teams that won in highly contested games. Use that momentum. I mean, you look at Steele going to play Lake Travis. You look at Judson going to play Westlake. Use that momentum against those teams. You're going to need it. And on the flip side, we talk about losing Lake Travis. Hey, you didn't play with your starting quarterback. So if he's healthy and ready to roll, I think you feel pretty confident, because you did play Arlington Martin close. I got a question from Scotty T here. That was our last question, but I never pass up a chance to involve Scotty T in this. Does Katy Jordan have a chance to win their district, Jackson? I mean, that's a bold statement right there. They had a very convincing win. But what do you think, Jackson?
I think there's always a chance. What I will say is what I really liked what I saw in Katy Jordan. I was very concerned with Pato, is the offense for Pato did not look very good in week 1. Of course, there's things to work on, but they played 3 different quarterbacks, only scored 14 points against a Conroe team who finished 4th in the Conroe SD district last year. I think there is a chance that Jordan could make a good little run in district. There's always a chance for them to take first, but I would love to see that game against Katy, as Katy has always been top dog there. So very interested to see how they do in that Katy IC district.
It's going to be a very interesting district indeed. And Scott, we did talk about Allen a little earlier. I think we're not too nervous about them yet. I mean, we'll see how they do this week. Like I said, I believe they're playing CE King, if I'm not mistaken. I think that game's going to tell us a lot more, than them playing, Bosco, because of course, private school versus everything else. So, hey, I think that's going to do our first show today. I like to always close my show, with some shout outs. So Jackson, who are you shouting out today?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out Scott because he's on here right now. Miss you, man. It was a lot of fun working with you. Hope you're doing good at your new job and everything. Also gonna shout out everyone who went out to games this weekend from the VYPE crew. Got a lot of awesome content. Got a lot of awesome game coverage throughout the weekend. And I know it's busy. I know it's long hours, but it's a lot of fun. Also want to shout out you and Shana here. We had a great show and just excited for the week 2 of Texas high school football.
Shana, who you shouting out today?
You know, my DFW crew, they've been absolutely amazing throughout last season, the summer, and this upcoming season. They're already working hard and getting the job done. So big shout out to them. Obviously, Scotty T, hey, how you doing? Hope things are great. And then, you know, fans and parents and everybody that filled those stadiums. I saw pictures of packed stadiums back at week 1, and you know we had seasons where we couldn't have very many fans. So to see them full again, to experience the band and the cheering and the way Texas high school football is supposed to be. Big shout out to everybody, like Jackson said, who went out and showed up to games and cheered on their loved ones and just their city.
And I am going to shout out not only Scott but Alan for jumping in the chat and asking some questions that we got to answer. So hey, gotta love the interaction right there. And shout out to all the Texas high school football teams putting on some good matchups. Can't wait for week 2. We'll talk about week 2 on Thursday for our preview show, 3:00. Don't want to miss that. Tomorrow, St. Pius X Coach's Corner with Coach Crandall at 3:00 with Josh Cook will be here at 3:00 again, and then on Wednesday we'll hopefully have our first episode of Coach's Corner. It's gonna do it for our show today, everyone. I mean, hey, it's here, and I'm so excited that football is here. So until tomorrow, until our St. Pius Coach's Corner show, I'm Whack. That's Jackson and Shana. We'll see you at the games.